Coming up,
Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you.
the Dream Journal.
Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me.
So good morning. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. I am Catherine Bell, and this is the Dream Journal, a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of your nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Listening to the beautiful music of Rick Kleffel, created new for you every week. How can we work with each other's dreams respectfully and honestly? We'll be talking today with Carol Warner, the woman who guided the creation of the IASD Ethics Statement, the world's gold standard for safe and ethical dream work. Stay tuned for that. This is Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a podcast, so you can look for that on all of your regular podcast places, and also on the KSQD website. You can find that at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Look for the Dream Journal, review it, subscribe, especially on Apple Podcasts, and tell a friend. This really helps people find the show. Well, starting with my personal dream work. As my listeners know, I am traveling. I'm actually broadcasting at this point from Annapolis, Maryland, just across the bridge from Washington, D.C., and I have been on the road with Rick Kleffel holding down the studio in Santa Cruz. Thank you so much, Rick. I so appreciate this. And what is up for me today? I had, it seems like kind of an anxiety dream, but there's always so much more to these dreams than you think. And this dream had to do with trying to find some clothing for the friend of my son. And the clothing, well, here it is on the air, so I share. The clothing happens to be a t-shirt and some underwear. And I'm trying to find these things for him and looking everywhere. And, I do finally find some, and I woke up and I just wrote this dream down thinking, oh gosh, I got to write all these dreams down. And it seemed like a kind of a pointless dream. But, as I've been feeling into it, I realized that the t-shirt and the underwear is what I get from the car whenever I get to a new destination, and I take it out and bring it with me into the house so I can, put on some clean clothes in the morning after my shower. And so it felt to me like there's a little bit of anxiety about this trip, about the driving here. And, it's been 3 and a half, almost 4 weeks now on the road. And it's been wonderful to see all my family, and it's also stressful to see all my family and all of Max's family too. It's just, there's something about old relationships that have been there for a long time. And how can I go into that old relationship with a new mindset, a kind of beginner's mindset? So that's how this dream has evolved for me, that there's something about a fresh start, like bringing in that clean t-shirt whenever I go to somewhere new and seeing what the relationship is like right now, rather than all the history that we've had together. And, that's my wish for all of us, really, that we can have our relationships be fresh and new, even if they are long-term relationships where we think we know what to expect, but let's keep an open mind. Try to start fresh. This is something I've been mulling over. So today, as usual, I'll be inviting call-ins during the last 20 minutes of the show. So in about 35 minutes, I'll open the phone. You can jot down the number now. It's 831-900-5773. And we'll get you on the air at that point. You can also send an email to Rick, who's in the Santa Cruz studio, And that email is onair@ksqd.org, onair@ksqd.org. And so if you feel like sending an email, today would be great because our guest is on the phone, so it makes the phones a little tighter. And so if you have an email, you can send it to onair@ksqd.org. So we're speaking today to Carol Warner. Welcome, Carol. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, good. Yes. No, I'm really looking forward to this. I'll get into my history with Carol here in a second, but and this is a topic of dream ethics. Is something that I'm really passionate about, and so we're going to talk a lot about the ethics of dream sharing today. And what does that even mean, and why is that important? Carol Warner has been working with dreams for over 45 years. She has a master's degree in religious studies from the University of Virginia and a master's in social work from Smith College. She's a psychotherapist in private practice and over the past 36 years has served in various positions on the International Association for the Study of Dreams. Carol was chair of the ethics committee for over 20 years, and she led the development of the Dreamwork Ethics Statement, which has become the gold standard for safe and ethical dream work. And in addition to her work with the IASD, Carol Warner has two books. One is called At the Feet of the Master, which had its genesis in a dream and tells the story of John the Beloved's life with Jesus. Her second book is Return, Dreaming and the Journey, which focuses on modern dream work. Carol's webpage is caroldwarner.com. Got to get the letter D in there, caroldwarner.com. So, Carol, hello.
Hello.
So, 45 years, that's a long time to be working with dreams. Maybe you could just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started, with your interest in dreams.
Okay. I think I wrote my first paper on dreams when I was 12 years old in seventh grade. So the interest goes far back. And I began after college, and I had taken a year to travel around the world, actually, after college. Very much a student budget type of thing on a airline ticket. That wasn't a around-the-world ticket, so you have a certain amount of stops. And then I went by bus, and I'm just saying that because on that trip, it was a very, very beautiful trip, one certainly I couldn't do today with everything that's going on. But I was very fascinated everywhere by how people experience God in different places, different religions, and so on. So when I got back from this trip, I was very much, fascinated with religion, the development of religions, and certainly the inner experience of religions. I had stayed in a place in India and done a long-term meditation retreat, and so on and so forth. There were many experiences along the way. So coming back once I got back from the trip, my grandmother, who had always lived with us, she was a beautiful woman, and she was just a kind, gentle spirit, very, very smart. I always saw her as very spiritual, though I didn't have any idea what that meant. Mm-hmm. But I had the opportunity to spend time with her for about a month. But then at the end of that month, she had a stroke that paralyzed her. And she was in the hospital for a while, and she was still paralyzed. She, to the extent that she would pull out the tube. She clearly wanted to come home. She did not want to die in a hospital. She didn't want to be hooked up to machines or anything. And I'm telling this story because what happened when she got home is that she needed full-time care. Yeah. And so we hired nursing staff for 2 shifts. And I told my mom I wanted to do the third shift, that she had been such an incredible person in my life. And I thought that if I were in her room at night when she was most vulnerable, and in the dark and so on, that that she would be most comfortable of all when I would be there, rather than having a stranger sitting in the room. And so I took the night shift, and I put a pillow and a blanket by her bed. It was not a large room, and decided, well, what am I going to do with this time and this opportunity of focus? Because clearly it was probably going to be a time limited. I didn't know how long it would be. It turned out to be about 5 months. But it was going to be, an opportunity to turn within and to grapple with the many issues around death that I was facing, dealing with her impending death and her journey as she went from this world to the next. So what I decided to do was get a brand new journal and dedicate it to recording my dreams during this time, and to open up the world of dreams to myself. I'd never recorded a dream. I'd never worked with dreams. I didn't have any idea how to work with dreams. I didn't know what to do besides write them down. So that was the beginning of my dream experience. And as it turned out, from the very first dream was extremely powerful. I don't know if we have time to get into that today, but it was each night seems like I went to a spiritual school where I was learning about death in the next world and the relationship between the two. And I would often be in a classroom learning lessons and so on. And it was very, very beautiful. It was very focused. It was very targeted to my needs at the time. It incorporated a lot of the questions that I had on that journey, on that year's journey. And so that's the long way of saying how I began to get involved in dream work. I was very, very excited about it, and within a very short period of time after her death, I ended up going to the University of Virginia to study religious studies, to follow up on what had opened up. And my first person I met there was Robert Vandecastle, who was running the Dream and Sleep Lab there. And that began a mentorship and a friendship which lasted until he died in 2015. He was a dear man, a brilliant man. I don't know about the audience if most people know who he is or not. His book, Our Dreaming Mind, is one of the classics in the field, exploring all aspects of dreaming and dream experience, from the laboratory to the Jungian and everywhere in between. And he was very much a part of the International Association for the Study of Dreams from the very beginning. Very beginning. And so it was he that introduced me to the association and to many of the people there. And so,
he's definitely a force. Well, the question then is, how did you get interested in ethics? Because dreaming is its own thing, and the study of ethics is like what is right and what is wrong. Or maybe you want to go ahead and define ethics and how you got interested in it, since you were the chairman of the ethics committee of the ISC for 20 years. It's clearly something that you're passionate about. What does ethics mean to you, and how did you get interested in that?
Okay, I'm not so good with the definitions, but I'll get there. So what happened in the young organization of ASD? It was first called Association for the Study of Dreams before we included our international mission in it. And so I was on the board pretty much from the beginning, and so we were hearing different stories. And what happened was, this was a new time. If you can imagine, in the 60s and 70s, the world was opening up to understanding of dreams. It was very much a time when people were more open to the spiritual, not in the classically religious aspect of things, and so on. And so the early ASD, in addition to looking at research lucid dreams and so on, attracted a panoply of people who were somewhat New Age. There were many, many workshops of all kinds that we had at the conference, and people were trying their new techniques out and trying to, help people understand dreams, each in their own way. And so in this setting, it became there were clinicians, of course, those who came into ASD who were clinicians did have ethics standards somewhat defined. I think that those were growing through the 90s, but at least somewhat defined ethics by how you work with a dream and a dreamer. But many of the people who came in were lay people and didn't have a clinical background, and that was awesome. By ASD, we definitely wanted to include people, professionals, as well as lay people. It was to be a very, very inclusive and diverse organization. And so many of these people who were lay people, and I'm not just blaming them here where I'm going, but so there were people offering their wares, so to speak. They would have a workshop, and then they would offer, maybe in the room later, which, that was something we had to define as an ethical violation. But one of for fees, one of the things that we found is that there was a lack of guidance on how to do these things. Everybody was doing their own thing. They would tell people what their dream meant. Some people, a person, for example, who was not a lay person, but who had gone on to become a Jungian analyst without any clinical training, would take people down deep into their deepest place in a workshop, in a 2-hour workshop that had no context. And, as a clinician, you're trained. You cannot take people to their deep places in an isolated workshop, and then just leave them hanging, because a lot of people have a lot of trauma and a lot of deep issues, which just can't be opened and closed like that without any context. So we were seeing a series of things that were disturbing, the crises that arose out of these workshops. And so I was seeing.
So I want to ask you, were people actually having like crises around this? I know that one of the current standards of the IASD is there's always a trained psychologist available in case somebody needs assistance, because as you say, people do have trauma, and dreams have a way of going right to that really deep place. And so the current standard is that there are always trained psychologists available during a conference, because conferences are when we do a lot of deep work together. And so I imagine there were some incidents that happened early in the IASD where people needed assistance and there wasn't anyone available.
Well, it wasn't really that was the issue, because there's some of the violations, the things that were going on, and I can get more into that, were things that should never happen in any workshop ever. So we did have such a team. I was on the team. I was seeing these things as they arose. And so that's what spurred my interest in being on the ethics committee, because we were seeing people do deep work that they should not do in the context of a 2-hour workshop, and the people who were vulnerable having psychotic episodes. I recall in one particular workshop, and this hasn't happened in years, so nobody needs to worry, but this is how the ethics statement came. One of the ways that it came about is one particular workshop where 3 different people had psychotic episodes out of the workshop. And it was because you cannot take a person to their deepest place in a 2-hour workshop. You cannot. It's a violation of every standard. So this type of deep work you may be talking about may be slightly different than what we were talking about. But
thank you, Carol. This is Carol Warner, and you're listening to the Dream Journal, and we're going to take a short break right now. And I wanted to say we're going to spend a lot more time talking about ethics and dreams and the things that can happen and how we can avoid that kind of thing of psychotic breaks and this kind of violation that can happen around dreams in just a moment. And I'll share some of my own experiences as well around dream work that crossed lines, and we'll talk a little bit about how to define what that line is so that we can stay safe together. So in about 20 minutes, I'll be opening up the phones when you'll be able to call in. That number is 831-900-5773. That's 900 KSQD in the Santa Cruz area. What have you been dreaming about lately? You can also send an email to Rick at onair@ksqd.org. We are speaking to Carol Warner, and this is the Dream Journal on K-Squid 90.7 FM. I am your host, Catherine Bell. Rick, go ahead and play that first track.
Someday you will be a man, and you will be the leader of a big old band. Many people coming from miles around to hear you play your music when the sun go down. Maybe someday your name will be in lights saying, Johnny, be good tonight. Go, 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 Johnny, go. Go, 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 Johnny, go. Go, 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 Johnny, go. Go, 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 Johnny, go.
Oh, you are listening to the Dream Journal. Our guest today is Carol Warner. And you can contact Carol through her webpage. That's caroldwarner.com. So, Carol, we were talking about the ethics of dream work. And I'm wondering if this would be a good time for me to share a little bit of my experience with ethics.
Sure. And then we can get into what the statement is itself so that people understand what we're talking about and what came about as a result of all of this.
Okay. Well, I want to say that I was a part of a group for several years in which it was very hierarchical, and the person who was leading the group was had a method of really just telling people what their dreams were, and without any concern for what the dreamer's point of view was. And it was often very helpful. He was a very insightful person. And yet there were cases where the dream was interpreted to mean you should give me X amount of money, and this sort of thing. And it was a situation where the control kind of got stronger over the years I was associated with this group, and luckily I lived quite far away, so I was not a regular member, but I came for retreats several times a year, and I would hear about things that had happened to people who were deeper in the group, that were people going bankrupt, and people feeling very controlled, and yet there was a way that it felt like that was the right thing. Is that the insights that come through our dreams are so powerful that we kind of get vulnerable as we share what our deepest part of ourselves with somebody else, and so it can seem to be the right thing to do to give all of our money and time to this certain organization, and yet it was clearly not the right thing. And it wasn't until the group fell apart because of these various violations that I kind of even snapped out of my own kind of fascination with the group, and put what had happened into context, because at the time it seemed quite normal. And that's the tricky thing, is we want to be able to defend people even when they don't feel like they're being wronged, because there can be manipulation that happens without that person even knowing it.
Okay, so thank you, Catherine. So what Catherine is pointing to, it obviously went very deep. It went very far from the person assigning meaning to someone else's dream. But that was one of the places where we started in the evolution of the Dreamwork Statement, is that the dream belongs to the dreamer. And so nobody knows what the dream means, so that systems of interpretation, which includes somebody, a so-called expert or dream dictionary or whatever it is, telling a person what they mean, can be quite misleading and even harmful, as Catherine attests to, and as some of the early examples that I saw. So I'm going to read parts of the statement so that people understand what we're talking about. IASD celebrates the many benefits of dream work. It recognizes there are potential risks, and this is what we wanted to address, the risk, and make sure that we protected people, vulnerable people like it. IASD supports an approach to dream work and dream sharing that respects the dreamer's dignity and integrity, and which recognizes the dreamer as the decision maker regarding the significance of the dream. It's so important. And that's true in clinical therapy, too. If you have a therapist who's telling you what your dream means, that's not the right approach. It maybe suggests, well, I wonder if, and if it resonates with the dreamer, that's fine. But if it doesn't, if it doesn't feel right, the dreamer should always feel empowered to say, no, that doesn't really feel right. Systems of dream work that assign authority or knowledge of the dream's meaning to someone other than the dreamer can be misleading, incorrect, and harmful. And I saw a lot of the harm, and Catherine's example is, a great deal of harm happened, throughout that whole group. Fortunately, I think that group did come to ASD, and we pointed out some of the errors of the authoritarian style, and I was assigned to work with them to help them with it, and I hope in the long run it did. We didn't see them again after those couple of years, but it's after that Catherine and I hooked up, and she shared her story, which was very, very powerful. Ethical dream work helps the dreamer work with his or her own dream images, feelings, and associations, and guides the dreamer to more fully experience, appreciate, and understand the dream. And you can go ahead and read the rest of the Dreamwork Ethics Statement online at the IAS Dreams website. But
I think it's called asdreams.org, I believe is the website.
Thank you, asdreams.org. And so what we just learned is that the dreamer always has the authority and the decision-making over their own dream. For example, if I've been traumatized by fire, and I have a dream, that image of a fire, and somebody else, fire for them is more of a spiritual thing about, burning away the old and bringing in the new. And they tell me that my dream is related to that archetypal meaning rather to my own, then the whole meaning of the dream for me is going to get misled and take me off track and so on. And what our goal is, whether it's in psychotherapy or whether it's in dream work in the organization or outside of it, is to empower the dreamer, to help the dreamer to feel that their understanding, comes from within, from the dream itself, and that we can serve as guides or use techniques to help the dreamer find their own meaning. But that's really, really key, is the authority over their own dream. And, of course, there's different worldwide systems of working with dreams, such as Native American and so on, and we respect those traditions, too. We do not say there's only one way to work with the dream. It's just that the dreamer has the authority over the dream, and that's been our stance. And since we've really developed that policy, we haven't had the issues that we did all the time
that's really
previously.
Exactly. Well, that is the key, that the dreamer is the final authority on their own dream. And when I was new with the IAC, just 3 or 4 years ago, fairly recently, I happened to be in a workshop or a presentation that Carol Warner led about the history of the ethics statement, and I was there as a volunteer helping with the tech, and I don't know that I would have chosen this one, but I was fascinated by the story she was telling about the power of dreams and how how important it is to be careful with the treatment. And I, in fact, recognize the very anonymized description she gave of some of the organization that I was involved in, and I had some kind of awakening by realizing how unethical that had been, like, at a kind of a deeper level. And so I did have this conversation with Carol after the presentation, and something that I've become very passionate about, and I'm a current member of the ethics committee, and things do occasionally come up that need to be addressed, and it's just good to have a way that we can talk about it. But it's great to start with the essence of that is the dreamer's. The dream is the dreamer's own. It's not their possession exactly, but it's their own expression, and they have the final word on what it actually means. And I hope we exemplify that here on the Dream Journal by always asking, could it be something like this, or if it were my dream, I might be thinking about that. And that's some of the ways that we can work with each other around our dreams without being directive, not saying your dream definitely means this, or clearly you have issues with your mother, or this kind of thing, which is very harmful. It's people, it can be easy to fall into that, but it is number one, it's not helpful to the dreamer, and it could be harmful to your relationship with the dreamer to have this way of being so directive. And so I have found it very helpful to read this ethics statement, and I'll include links to it on the show page, but it's at asdreams.org. Look underneath About Us, and you can see the ethical statement.
If I may add an example that really it brings it into harsh relief. This is just before that I joined the ethics committee, and it's what drove me into it. So we had a conference, and one of our well-known dream leaders who should have known better, and he always used the "if it were my dream" technique that Catherine just described. So owning it. If this were my dream, then this is what it would mean. Instead, this woman came in who apparently had, very deep-seated sexual abuse issues. Now, I think that probably most people in the group could see that, but she hadn't seen it yet. And so he was very directive with her and said she's been sexually abused as a child, blah, blah, blah. And so it really highlights that no matter how clear something seems to you as a person in the group or a therapist, you have to let the dreamer come to their own. Anyway, he was very directive about her. And in the morning dream group. And that evening at the dream ball, it was the most, she came in buck naked. We don't do nudity and ASD. She came in buck naked, wearing a giant dildo around her neck, and she was psychotic. She had gone into a psychotic episode from what had happened in the dream group and his insistence on it and so on. And so I have no idea what her name was. I tried to find out. She clearly needed a lot of help and support, but that was the spur for me to get on the ethics committee, and then to begin to develop a Dreamwork Ethics Statement, about what can be done, within ISD, and what, to provide safety and protection. And we think we know what somebody else's dream means, but we should never press it on them, no matter how clear it seems to us.
Right. Well, like you're saying, that she perhaps didn't even know what had happened in her past, and so she wasn't ready to know either, clearly.
Right. Right. And he was just showing off a little bit, my guess is. And, you don't do that with people's lives and psyches, no matter how vulnerable they are. Because, many vulnerable people come to ASD, they're trying to grow and to heal and so on, as well as everybody else, and we all have our vulnerable places. So our job is to protect that and to respect the dignity of each individual dreamer as equal to ourselves, not as somebody to be shown or to be condescended to and taught in those kinds of ways. So I think we've done a pretty good job with it, and I'm glad Catherine is on the committee still, and helping people to understand these things and to continue a safe, healthy, fun dream work. Because dream work can be tons of fun.
It can be, but it also goes very deep, and so sometimes there's reasons that we don't remember things that have happened in the past, and it may be better to keep that memory hidden for the time being.
Correct.
So,
although our dreams generally know our pacing, and when we're ready to have something. I don't know what her context was of having that dream, if it had been, a while before and she was working on it in therapy or whatever. But generally, dreams have a pacing all their own, but it's not to be brought out in public.
Right,
Any vulnerable material like that.
So we are talking to Carol Werner. This is the Dream Journal here in Santa Cruz. This is the Squid. K-Squid, 90.7 FM, Community Radio of Santa Cruz. My name is Catherine Bell, and we are about to start our last segment, so you are welcome to call now. The phone number is 831-900-5773, or you can send Rick an email at onair@ksqd.org. Again, that phone number is 831-900-5773. You can share a dream or ask a question. We'll be right back with Carol Werner. My name is Catherine Bell. You're listening to the Dream Journal, and we are here live with Carol Werner from the IASD and many other places as well. So, Carol, what do you want to talk about here in the last segment? What is your priority? Oh, I do want to say first, the phone lines are open. So if you would like to call and get on the air, ask a question, share a dream, that number is 831-900-5773, and you can also send an email to onair@ksqd.org. And so while we're waiting to see if we get a caller in, then Carol, what is up for you now? What do you want to say? What's your priority?
So right now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm republishing both of my books. One of them, which is called At the Feet of the Master, is the one I'm currently working on the revisions and getting back out into print again. And the other is a more clinical work. At the Feet of the Master first came to me in a dream. So I was in the body of John, the disciple of Jesus, and we were at a place where he and I and the disciples had slept within a recent period of time. This was shortly after the crucifixion. So he was mulling back on teachings that Jesus has given him. And that was the end of the dream, and it was so clear, and it was so mystifying, and why I would be in the body of this man who I really knew nothing about. So just fast forward, I was almost afraid to deal with it. I was in Jungian therapy at the time, and I finally dared. It took me probably about a year to open up the dream with the analyst, and she was really good at helping me to do that out of that. Through the book and my prayer and meditation time, I was asked to write a book. I was asked to download. Well, I was asked if I would take notes. Let's put it that way. That the book would be given to me, and that I would write it, and that I would be, guided in all of the words. And I said okay, and I did it. I didn't know anything I made it on the condition that I had to be conscious at all times so I could stop the process if I wasn't comfortable with it. And I didn't want it to take up all my time, And so the condition, was kind of a mutual agreement. And out of that, the book came. And it's really a beautiful story of John, the beloved disciple, and his 3 years with Jesus from the point of view of John as an old man looking back. And the reason I bring it up on this show is because the book, much like the Bible is, the book is full of dreams, very, very full of dreams from the start to the end, and detailed dreams that John had, which helped him process and understand the different stages of the teachings that he was going through, the friendship that he was developing with Jesus. As many of you may know, that John was known to be the closest disciple to Jesus, and they had a lot of personal time together, and some of that time was in nighttime journeys, in nighttime travels and nighttime teaching.
So yeah, there's a quote that I have a question about that, actually, Carol. There's a quote that you sent to me that seems related to this book that you're speaking about, which was, "In dreams we enter God's world. Through dreams He enters ours." I wonder if you could say a little bit about that. You did mention the Bible has many, many dreams in it, which is true, but in recent times it's not really recognized that dreams are not necessarily seen as the voice of God. And I wonder if you would say something about that.
Yes, absolutely. And so God never stops speaking to us, God is alive and always has been. And so, yes, in our increasingly secular world, that perception it is certainly there. There are many people who have written about spiritual dreams and so on. But what John learned at the feet of Jesus is through their dreams. And this was a quote apparently from Jesus to him, explaining to him as they were embarking on their nighttime dream journeys together that in dreams we enter God's world. We go into these spaces, and that through the dream He enters ours, and so that it's much of our perception of what happened and so on. So many people are not seeking spirituality when they're remembering their dreams or whatever, and so there's a lot of dreams that aren't necessarily apparently spiritual in nature. But in the journey that they did together, the focus was definitely on spiritual learning and spiritual work together. And certainly for all of us, it's available to ask that we grow in our spiritual understanding of each dream. Rita Dwyer and I used to do a workshop every year at ASD, and we could pick any dream. We would ask dreamers to pick any dream that they had, and we would work with it as if it were spiritual and see what would come out of it.
Do you have some examples that you'd like to share?
Well, I would like to share some examples from the book, if I might.
Sure.
Right, because so one of the things that he was talking about, was one night, he knew that evening that they were going to be dream journeying together. They had done their usual things, training and teaching and so on with the disciples during the day. And so he's having an experience which helped him understand the nature of the divine through the dream. So I'm just going to read, and you can stop me when you need me to stop. Something startling happens. I arise from where I've been sitting, and suddenly, without warning, I'm soaring like an eagle over the hillsides. I feel ecstatic to be able to fly so effortlessly. Then just as suddenly, it is nighttime. This is all in the dream, and I am high in the sky. I discover my nature is that I'm a star, brilliant, hot, and gaseous, blazing in the sky. Again, the scene changes, and I'm back on Earth. I'm an ocean, cool, wet, salty, and wild. I feel the enormous surges of energy within me. I go through many changes in this way. Wherever I direct my consciousness, that I become, and I experience the essence of a tree or a mountain or an animal or a body of water. I know that what enables me to make these changes is that my essence is God, and that God knows and is known by all things, inanimate or inanimate. God is everything. I enter the consciousness of different people in this way, and I find in their natures a tremendous resistance to and denial of these energies. I can sense how very far away they are in their being from expressing their divine nature. It is as if the very matter that makes up their bodies impedes the flow of divinity. Then I'm in Jesus consciousness, and I experience complete freedom from the limitations of matter. I feel once again that state of perfect attunement in the sense of the eternal, the omnipresent, and the omniscient that come with it. I'm in a state of perfect awe as I pull away from this experience. I know that Jesus is God willed to be in human form, and the density of the matter that constitutes his body is very different from that which makes up the bodies of other humans. I looked up at my experience of transformations and realized each one was a look into a different face of God. And so he says the experience of Jesus was substantively different. It was a glimpse into the actual being and nature of God himself.
Wow.
So he wakes up feeling very, very rich and full of a whole new understanding of the materiality of the world around him, of himself, of Jesus, and so on. So I don't know if that's a good answer to one of your questions, but it was very, very, he entered into the dreams, and then God entered into his consciousness.
Right. Well, I certainly have never particularly looked for spirituality, but I have found that dreams have brought the sense of spirituality to me in a way that was rather unexpected to me, and so I have found it to be a very personal kind of spirituality, and very, very held often. And and not in every dream, but there are dreams where I can feel that sense of connection.
And I would say that probably there's many times that there might have been connections that you didn't know, or that one doesn't know. I'm going to go into another place to read here. So when he's talking about the ability of the spirit body to travel outside the physical body in night was one of the most valuable lessons he learned from the dreaming state. He said, among the places we visited while in the dream state was the angelic realm, which held great beauty and awe-inspiring power. This was the realm of the more highly involved helper beings who guide our lives on earth. They're responsible for carrying out missives from the highest levels of the spiritual hierarchy. To be in the presence of these beings was to be in a realm where there was no room for the impurities of the earth below. They're charged with the most important of works. It was their responsibility to inspire, direct, guide, and protect through impression in the manner they sensed their messages would be best received. He learned that dreams were one of the most favorite vehicles of impressions, but most of the time people had no idea these were visitations. So the words of the angel came through somebody ordinary.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, and these were all quotes from this book that you've been revising, and so these are these insights that you've had, based on your dreams or through this kind of channeling experience that you've had. It sounds like.
Well, these were his words. These were his experiences. So.
But his being John the Baptist, his.
No, not John the Baptist. That's a different John. That's a different John. This is John the disciple, John the beloved. John the Baptist was the one who was the precursor to Jesus, who did the baptizing before Jesus began his mission, and who baptized Jesus. John the disciple was the one who wrote Revelation, who wrote the Gospel of John, and who, as a disciple, was the closest of the disciples to Jesus during their time on earth.
But where did these words? Are they saying these words came from your dreams, or how did you get? Or are these something that he wrote?
This was the book that was given to me.
Oh,
that
I see the channeling
I
experience. Yeah.
downloaded, right. And so
Right.
it was
Okay.
in the words of John. The book was in the
Right.
words of John, from as an old man reflecting on his life with Jesus.
Right.
So
Okay.
this whole book was apparently written from start to finish, all 300 and something pages of it, before it was given to me, and I just transcribed it. So
Right.
it was like a download, right?
Right.
You know, like the book was
but
downloaded to my brain.
right. Right. But so you're reissuing this book. Is that why you're going through it again, or what is the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm revising. I hired a new publishing company because the one that I had been using lost track that I had the book and said I had no sales, even though I knew I had quite a bit of sales. So it was just one of those terrible fraudulent things you end up dealing with. And so I had to move. I'm moving it into a different. But the book is still intact. I did not change it the way that it came through me. I did not change it except for punctuation. It's intact the way it was downloaded.
There's ethics for you again. There's ethics all over the place.
Ethics all over the place. Ethics all over the place.
That could be like a motto of our age. I mean, there's like the whole thing of ethical behavior. What does that mean to each individual person? You were saying we're talking about the definition of ethics.
Right.
Yeah. I know. Have a little bit of an echo. That's all right. I think we're nearing the end, though I think maybe Rick is getting us a caller, it sounded like, perhaps. But let's just give a second to see what he comes up with. And so tell us again the name of this book, Carol, please.
The name of the book is At the Feet of the Master.
At the Feet of the Master.
And
right.
At the Feet of the Master. And you can see it, from my website, caroldwarner.com. Hopefully it will be out with the new publisher within the next month or so. I'm going to finish up my end of it, this weekend. And I buy it then. If you wish to buy from the current publisher, you can go ahead, but just know that I won't get anything out of it.
Okay, so
yeah, right. But
we should wait a little bit.
just about a month, or send me an email and let me know you're interested, and I'll let you know when it's out.
Okay.
It's a beautiful story. It's a very, very beautiful story, and it's full of dreams and dreaming.
Okay. Well, thank you, Carol. This is
question.
Yeah. No. This will been a fabulous conversation, and no, the phone call was not for us. It was, alas, something else going on. But I want to ask. So you have your webpage, caroldwarner.com, and do you have any other final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners? Encouragements, perhaps.
I did. It was another dream. I was hoping I would have a little time to read it because we're in this darkest of times right now, and evil is all around us, and it seems like the world is caving in on us, and where is there to go with it sometimes? At least that's what I feel, and what's surrounding many of the people that I work with. Just this sense of evil is so pervasive in the world, and lots of ethics and lawlessness and so on. And so, he was experiencing these things as well in a different way with the crucifixion of Jesus and all of the people who were persecuting him. But he had this wonderful dream, and I think it speaks to us today as much as it spoke to him at the time. And I'm hoping that it will lift in some way the spirit of the listeners. In the dream, I'm going through time. So he's time traveling, passing through as if a visitor into a new town or village. With each place and time I visited, I felt the energy of the people there, and I read the inner energy field, something he was trained to do. At first, it was very saddening how much darkness and ugliness I saw and felt in the world. It was thus many times. There was light, which I recognized as Spirit Christ brought with him into the world. This light was isolated at first and surrounded by the darkness of the lower urges of the human spirit. As time passed, the darkness became more dangerous and more ominous. ominous. However, at the same time, the light was growing brighter and began to expand into more of the energy fields that were present. For a time, the light seemed to retreat into isolated areas of the world that were very dark and scary. I was puzzled greatly by this. Yet as I moved on in my dream and as I traveled through time, I saw the light spreading, and I heard the beginnings of a chorus of the most exquisite song I could ever imagine. It was as if the notes in the light of the energy fields of these isolated human beings began to resonate in the energy field of the universe. These notes then began to resonate with each other. Slowly over many years, the notes in the light grew majestic in strength and beauty and carried with them great truth and great power. I remember thinking within the dream that the effect of the notes and the light on people on the earth was very much like what I experienced on that day in Bethsaida. Now, Bethsaida was a day of healings that Jesus did hundreds and hundreds of healings in one day, and the disciples were all there present. And it was such a feeling of the beauty of light and healing and truth and God in the world. And he's feeling, and very, very discouraged as he goes to sleep that night. But when he has this dream, he knows that the direction the world is moving towards is this great light, which is going to connect people all over the earth, no matter how it seems, no matter how dark it seems, no matter how...
So.
May it be so. He wakes up in ecstasy and tears of joy. Surely there could be no better future for mankind than what he had just experienced. So, I, as you say, may it be so. We can only hope and pray, that out of all of this darkness,
Thank you.
that it may not be in our lifetime, but it may be.
Well, thank you so much. This is Carol Warner. So I'm glad to have you on the show, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. So next week we will have on the show Doris Snyder. We'll be talking with her about her recent book on the benefits of daydreaming. I am Catherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com, and you can email me at catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. If you have a dream you're curious about, do contact me so I can sign you up for your free introductory dream consultation. And thank you to everyone who has left a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm so glad you are enjoying the show. Feel free to leave your own rating and review. I'd especially like to thank today Rick Kleffel for his masterful manning of the board. Thank you also to all the fabulous donors who support this station. We completed a pledge drive very successfully. We are 100% listener supported, and donations are always welcome at ksqd.org. And when you do donate, be sure to tell them you are a Dream Journal listener. I am Catherine Bell, and you are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz.
Trying to take away my worries.